Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video we're going to learn the two-player game Crypt Hunters, which is set in the Warhammer Age of Sigmar universe and published by Games Workshop, who helped sponsor this video. The city of Glim's Forge is under attack, and a fearless band of Stormcast Eternal Warriors must brave the terror of the 10,000 tombs to find an old relic that can help them turn the tide in battle. But the Chainrasps who lurk in those tombs aren't just going to let them take it without a fight. So join me at the table and let's learn how to play. The game comes with unassembled push-fit models, meaning that once you clip them from their sprues, they snap together without the need for glue, though you can add glue if you'd like. To see an example, click the link in the description of this video, which will take you step by step through what to expect. And if you've never assembled miniatures before, I recommend trying it. It's much easier than you might think, and it's very satisfying. And it's just my personal opinion, but the miniatures made by Games Workshop are the highest quality, most detailed, easiest to assemble models that you're going to find, so these are a great place to start. To set up, decide who will control the 4 powerful Stormcast Eternals, which are these 4 golden models, and who will control the overwhelming forces of the Chainrasps, which are these ghostly blue models. Along with the models, also take the character cards related to them. The Stormcast player will have these 4, and the Chainrasp will have these 2. Now separate and shuffle the Stormcast Eternal and Chainrasp power cards, which you can identify by their different backs. Have each player draw 3 from their own deck, and they can look at their own cards, but must keep them a secret from the other players. Then you return all undealt cards back to the box. In this way, it's very unlikely that you'll ever have the exact same combination of power cards each time you play. The game comes with a variety of tiles, and from them you'll set aside this entrance, stairwell, and what is known as the Hessian Illuminator tile. The stairwell is only used if you're playing the campaign mode, which we're not going to set up right now. We will talk about it later though, so for now, return this to the box. The Chainrasp player now puts the Illuminator tile face up near their side of the table, where they then shuffle and place face down on top of it all the rest of the tiles, creating the crypt stack. Well, all of them except for the entrance tile, which you'll now place face up in the center of the play area. This has 6 open paths that extend from it at each tile edge. And keep that in mind as the Stormcast player now puts all 4 of their models on it. The concept of open paths is important because next the Chainrasp player will draw and add tiles from their crypt stack to each of the 6 open paths around the entrance, expanding the dungeon as far out as the Stormcast Eternals can see, which is known as their line of sight. And placing new tiles like this is done in 3 steps. First, see if a new tile should be placed by checking if any of the Stormcast models would have line of sight to a tile added to its available paths. A model always has line of sight to the tile they are currently in, and any open adjacent area from there. So that means a tile could be put into any one of these 6 locations surrounding the entrance tile, because as we already indicated, each of its sides is an open path. For the next step, the Chainrasp player takes the top face-down tile from their stack and flips it over. Then, as the third step, they add that tile to any one of those visible locations identified in the first step. Each tile will show a path, and when a new tile is placed, its path must connect to the end of another path already in play. So this tile, for example, could be placed here. Now repeat those 3 steps with the Chainrasp player drawing and adding tiles to any space a Stormcast would have line of sight to. In this way, the Chainrasp player will have some control over how the dungeon takes shape. However, they can't place a tile in a way that would prevent future tiles from connecting to it. For example, they couldn't place this tile like this because now its path goes directly into the wall of another tile. The only time you can place a tile that would create a dead end is if you have no other choice. But in this case, we could rotate the tile like this, and now it goes out into an open path. I should also point out that line of sight extends along any perfectly straight line that you can draw from the center of the tile that a figure is on to the center of any other potential tile, so long as you never leave the path. For example, this open area here is within line of sight of these models because a straight line can be drawn directly here. So that means when the Chainrasp player is adding new tiles, they could also add one to this area. However, they would not be able to add a tile here because a straight line drawn from the center of where this tile would be to the center of the tile they are on would require leaving the path. The Chainrasp player will now keep drawing and placing new tiles until there's no valid spots to add them to. And in this way, a new and changing battlefield will be created each time you play. A finished initial battlefield might look something like this, where no more tiles can be added because new ones would be outside the line of sight of the Stormcast models. With the dungeon created, also set the dice in an area where both players can reach them, along with the various tokens. And then give each player one of these round sequence cards, which will help players remember the phases of a round. And that's the setup. In Crypt Hunters, the Stormcast Eternals will be exploring the twisting caverns of the 10,000 tombs, looking for a winch tile that unlocks the final Illuminator tile that they'll escape through. And all the while, the Chainrasp player will be doing everything they can to prevent any of the Stormcast Eternals from escaping alive. The game is played over a series of rounds, and each round is broken into 5 phases, which you'll see written out on your sequence card. And the first phase is adding tiles. This phase follows the same steps performed during the setup, where the Chainrasp player adds tiles one after the other to any spots that are within line of sight of the Stormcast Eternals. And since we already did this for the setup, that means during the first round, you can actually skip this phase. It's already done. As an example though, let's pretend it's a later round, and during this phase we had Stormcast Eternals here and here. Now the Chainrasp player would draw new tiles for these positions, and additional tiles if any of those extended the line of sight of any Stormcast Eternals even further, like over to here. I should also point out that Stormcasts can see through other models, so the one back here can still see through these two into this space and beyond. So that's phase 1, adding tiles. And then you come to phase 2, Stormcast Eternals Activation. Here, the Stormcast player activates their figures one at a time, and each model gets up to 2 actions. And this can be any combination of moving or attacking. So a model could move twice, attack twice, or move and attack, or attack and move, or just do one action, or no action at all. But you must fully activate one model before you move on to the next one. So let's start by learning how to perform a move action. When a Stormcast moves, check its move stat, which is located here on the card related to its model. This is how far it can travel with a single move action, and most can only move 1 tile. But Valiant over here is the exception. It can move up to 2. Another rule is that the start of the game is the only time more than 2 Stormcasts can share the same tile. This means that if a Stormcast is moving, it cannot enter or try to pass through a tile that already has 2 Stormcasts. So let's say these ones were here. That means that this model could not enter or move through this tile. This rule also means that during the first round, the Stormcast player must move at least 2 of their models out of this tile in order to break them up. Now we're in a situation where we're honoring the rules, where at most only 2 Stormcasts can be on a tile at a time. Later, when Chainrasps are on the board, Stormcasts also can't enter any tile with any number of them. So that means this tile is blocked to the Stormcast player. So that's moving, and next we come to the attack action, but at the start of the game there's nothing to attack. So I've just added a few Chainrasps here to help with the examples, but we'll see how these normally get added a little bit later. If you want to attack with Valiant, it can only target a visible Chainrasp in an adjacent tile like this one here. On the other hand, if any one of the other 3 Stormcast models, known as Castigators, has line of sight to a tile containing 1 or more Chainrasps, it can make an attack action against them. And remember, Stormcasts can always see through other models. So this particular Stormcast could attack this tile with 1 Chainrasp or this tile with 2. And let's say for this example, it decides to attack this tile. With their target tile selected, the Stormcast player now rolls as many dice as the model's attack value, which is shown here on their character card. So in this case, they would roll 3 dice. Any blank or ghost sides do nothing, but for each lightning bolt symbol showing, the Chainrasp player must pick one of their models from that tile and then place it back on their side of the table. The models a Chainrasp player has here are known as their lurking Chainrasps. The Chainrasp player's models aren't as strong. However, when one of these are destroyed, it goes back to lurking, where it can then re-enter the game later. But when a Stormcast model dies, it's removed from the game permanently, and we'll talk more about that later. Now though, once the Stormcast player has activated each of their models, it's time for Phase 3, removing tiles. Here, the Chainrasp player removes all tiles in the battlefield that the Stormcast Eternal models don't have line of sight to, unless their model were to move to an adjacent tile on their path. Now that might sound a little confusing, so let me just rearrange this example to show you what I mean. Alright, in this arrangement here, we have a tile that no Stormcast Eternal has line of sight to. However, if this one moved to here, then it would, so that means this tile will not be removed. Any tile that could be seen if the Stormcast Eternal moved one space stays on the board. Now as another example, look at this tile. There's no Stormcast Eternal that could move one space and be within line of sight of it. This is also true of these three tiles here. So all four of them would be removed, and any Chainrasp on a tile that is removed goes back to lurking. And the tiles you're getting rid of will be discarded from the game. In a different situation, it's possible that after removing tiles, the battlefield will be divided into multiple sections, and if so, the Stormcast player chooses which of the sections will be kept. Let's say they decided they'd keep this section. Then all of the tiles on any other sections are discarded, and so are any models on them. Stormcast models removed in this way are said to be lost in the crypt and slain, and anytime a Stormcast is slain, you remove it from play by putting it on its character card. Once all the necessary tiles have been removed, it's time for Phase 4, Chainrasp Reinforcements. Here, the Chainrasp player picks any empty tile that has path ends that aren't connected to another tile or that would go into a dead end. And for each of those opened ends, adds a model to that tile up to a maximum of 3. So here they would add 2 models. Then they add models like this in any order to all other empty tiles with unconnected paths. Once that is done, they then add a single Chainrasp to every empty Soul Trap tile, which are the green ones that look like this. If that player ever runs out of lurking Chainrasps, then they will stop placing models during that phase. Although there are different poses for many of the Chainrasps, they're all considered to have the same abilities except for this one known as the Dread Warden, and we'll learn about its special ability a little bit later. The important thing to know now, though, is that the Dread Warden can only be added to the board once there are at least 4 other Chainrasps already on the battlefield. But otherwise, the Dread Warden is still considered a Chainrasp for all other gameplay purposes. With the Chainrasp Reinforcements on the board, it's now time for the final phase of the round, Chainrasp Activation. Unlike the Stormcast player, rather than being able to activate each of their models, the Chainrasp player instead gets 3 actions to divide among all their models, or 4 actions if their Dread Warden is on the battlefield. That's what makes this particular model special, and you'll find a reminder of this bonus action on the Dread Warden's character card. When spending their actions, the Chainrasp player has 3 possible ones to choose from, and let's start with the one called Moving. When a Chainrasp move action is taken, the player picks any one model and moves it to an adjacent tile, even if that tile is not connected by a path. These are ghostly creatures. They don't have to worry about paths. They can go right through walls. Now this Chainrasp couldn't go here because at most only 3 Chainrasps can be in any one space, and they also can't move into a space with a Stormcast Eternal. Now instead of performing the move action, the Chainrasp player has another type of action they can perform which also moves their models, but it's called drifting. To do this, they pick any one Chainrasp on the battlefield, and then choose a tile that it has line of sight to, maybe this one here, and then it drifts through the tile it is in and all the tiles along its way to its target. The catch is that it can take up to 2 Chainrasps from any of those tiles it drifted through and bring them with it to its final destination, so long as there's room for those models once it gets there. Also, during a drift, you can pass through spaces that already have 3 Chainrasps, as long as you don't stop there. But you cannot drift through spaces with a Stormcast Eternal. So the model here could drift, pick up a model from this space, and then keep drifting and pick up this model and drift all the way here to its final destination. The final action the Chainrasp player can choose from is attacking. To do this, the player picks a tile containing Chainrasps, and as a single action, all the Chainrasps there attack a single adjacent tile containing 1 or more Stormcasts, even if they don't have a path connected to them. So this group could attack here. To perform the attack, roll as many dice as the number of models on the attacking tile and ignore every blank or lightning symbol. But for each ghost symbol, the Stormcast player picks a model in the targeted space and then assigns one of these damage tokens to its character card. If a model ever has as many damage tokens on it as its wound value here, it's slain and removed from the battlefield. Keep in mind that during a round, a Chainrasp model can never attack more than once. So if you attacked with this group and wanted to perform another attack action, you need to pick different Chainrasps. With that, we've covered all the phases of a round, but there are still a few extra rules we need to go over. First of all, Orris here is a special Stormcast Eternal because as long as he is in play, he provides a special ability that can be resolved once per round, as shown here. This states that after any Stormcast Eternal has moved or attacked during its activation phase, then Valiant, Eric, or Astrid can perform a move or attack. Basically, you're getting 1 extra action that you can perform during this phase for as long as Orris is on the battlefield. Also, don't forget, each player is dealt 3 power cards during the setup, and you can play up to 1 of these during a round. The cards will say in bold at the top when they can be played, and then if you choose to play it, you resolve its ability as shown here, and then you remove the card from the game. There are also some special tiles in the game that we need to go over. Soul Trap tiles like this one we already saw, and if empty, these get a single Chainrasp added to them during the Chainrasp Reinforcement phase. This is a Spear Trap tile. After a Stormcast moves into it, they roll a die, and if they get a ghost symbol, they take a damage token. This is an Abyssal tile. When a Stormcast enters one, they cannot take another move action that turn. Also, if they start a round on one of these tiles, the first move action they take that round is ignored. So if they wanted to leave here, they would use 1 move action and do nothing, and then use a second to leave. This is the Winch tile, and if the Stormcast player can get one of their models to end its activation here, they collect this Winch token, which is a reminder that the winch has been used. Having this token is the only way they can move on to the final tile, the Hessian Illuminator. This is always at the bottom of the crypt stack, so let's pretend it's been revealed and now added to the board. Because it is the last tile, it means no new tiles will be added during the first phase of future rounds, and from this point on, as long as the Stormcast player has the Winch token, they can move one of their models onto the Illuminator tile, and if at least one of those models is on the tile at the end of the round, the Stormcast Eternal player immediately wins. On the other hand, if all of the Stormcast Eternals are slain, the Chainrasp player wins. And in rare cases, it's possible tiles could be placed in such a way that no further ones can be removed, and that traps the Stormcast in an eternal loop, also causing the Chainrasps to win. The Chainrasps also win if either the Winch or Illuminator tile are removed from play before the Stormcast player can get to them. And that's how you play a regular game of Crypt Hunters. But at the back of the rulebook, there are also rules for a campaign game which enlarges the battlefield that the Stormcasts need to explore. When setting up, put the stairwell, entrance, illuminator, and winch tile to the side, and then shuffle 9 random tiles with this stairwell tile. Put this into its own stack, and then shuffle the winch tile with all the other tiles, and then place all of those on top. This creates the crypt stack for the campaign. You'll use the entrance tile as usual, but still keep the illuminator set off to the side. The Chainrasp player also gets 3 power cards as normal, but the Stormcast player now gets 5. You otherwise play the game as normal, but now, once the winch token has been collected and the stairwell has been revealed, if a Stormcast Eternal can end the round On that tile, the first stage of the campaign is complete. You then take the entrance tile from wherever it was and then set it into a new area with all surviving Stormcasts placed on it. You also remove any wounds suffered by the surviving models. Any models that were slain previously will stay slain. The stairwell tile is now returned to the box, and the rest of the tiles are collected together except for the winch and illuminator. Then 9 of the tiles are shuffled together with the illuminator to start forming the crypt stack, which is set face down. And then you shuffle the winch into the rest of the tiles and set all of those on top. Now the battlefield is set up as normal, adding tiles as necessary, and the game continues with the Stormcasts trying to find the winch again and get to the illuminator tile to win. The game also comes with this achievement chart towards the back of the rulebook, and when a player first accomplishes any one of these tasks during a game, they will get to record their name and the date there. Additionally, one player can choose to play with any number of these burdens, and if they win, they mark their name and the date by that burden as its own type of achievement. But otherwise, that's how you play Crypt Hunters. If you have any questions about anything you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, other videos, and lots more over on the games page at Board Game Geek, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, please consider giving it a like, subscribing, and clicking that little bell icon so you get notification anytime we post a new video. But until next time, thanks for watching.